In the Pits is partnered with YI Paintball. Paintball, there's nothing like it. On the field or off, it's not just a sport, it's a community. The people, our people, come from all over, with vastly different lives during the week. But come time for paintball, we're one community, with a lot of stories about why. Follow YI Paintball on Instagram and meet the members of the paintball community. Learn about how they started, what their journey has been, and their ultimate why. Why paintball? What's your why? In the Pits is partnered with Podrunners Union. Follow Podrunners Union on Instagram to find strength in union and celebrate our sports pit crew. Send in photos to represent your union local and be featured. Stealing pods for undeserving teams. It's a living. In the Pits is partnered with Mariachi Águilas de Oro. Based in Austin and servicing the surrounding areas, these Golden Eagles will bring life to any event you are having, from birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, corporate events, or even a simple performance to enjoy. Guillermo Padilla, one of their trumpet players, is also a member of the Texas paintball scene. Visit them on Facebook and Instagram to check out some of their past performances, or give them a call to book them for your event today. In the Pits is partnered with Skull Monkeys Paintball. Equip, engage, excel. In the Pits is partnered with XTPL Events. The Extreme Tournament Paintball League is a series put on by the Lukow family of Paintball Fit fame that gives the opportunity for players to learn and grow together as a team. 3-man, Challengers and Champions X-Ball, Draft Mech X-Ball, and even Youth 3v3. There's something for everyone at XTPL. Not to mention prize tosses, raffles, and the infamous paintball munching contest. Events happen throughout the year, and the prizes never disappoint. Sign up for an XTPL event today on PB Leagues. In the Pits is partnered with Hydra. Designed by players, for players, you can outfit yourself in Hydra gear from head to toe. Have confidence that when you make a purchase from Hydra, you are purchasing a well-tested and well-thought-out product, trusted by several top teams, including first-place semi-pro team, PaintballFit.com. I personally recommend their Hydra Black knee pads. Purchases over $100 receive free shipping. Head to hydra.fit to browse their selection and discover the Hydra mentality. In the Pits is partnered with BEM Wraps. Behind every mask is a unique and creative player. Tap into it when you order your next custom headpiece. Their Build-A-Band lets you communicate with them one-on-one to make your order just the way you want, all the way down to the color of the stitch. Check out their Instagram at BEMWraps for drops and build videos of them working on orders. They offer very competitive pricing, so reach out today to get started on your own one-of-a-kind headpiece. In the Pits is sponsored by FU Athletics, created with a purpose and focused on building a better you. We are a brand that matters in your workout, and every purchase gives back to cancer research. Go to thefuathletics.com and use code INTHEPITS25 for 25% off of your order. In the Pits is partnered with Compete. Compete is a Texas-based brand by Jell Stewart of professional team AC Diesel that provides custom jerseys, pants, headbands, straps, tech shirts, and any other soft goods to help individuals and teams compete at the highest level. Support Texas Paintball and message Compete on Facebook or Instagram and mention In the Pits Podcast for 10% off your entire order. In the Pits is partnered with Get Dat Shot. Get Dat Shot now offers first-in-line photo and video editing, 20% off Get Dat Shot merch, and 20% off prints to all teams that wear the Get Dat Shot logo on their jersey. Message GetDat_shot on Facebook or Instagram to become a Get Dat Shot program team. In the Pits is partnered with Paintball Kumite. Paintball Kumite is a program designed by Colt Roberts of professional team San Antonio X Factor to take paintball players of all ages, experience levels, and skill groups and mold them into champions. The program breaks the game down into small, easy-to-learn sessions designed to help you master the fundamentals so that you can elevate your game. Newcomers to the program get a free 1-hour introductory class when mentioning In the Pits. To sign up for a class, message at Paintball Kumite on Instagram. Welcome everyone to episode 71 of In the Pits Paintball Podcast. This podcast is focused on everything that has to do with the paintball scene here in Texas, from professional players and teams to new divisional programs, local tournament series, field owners, Texas-based brands, even photographers and videographers. Every week, we will have a short and sweet episode with a new topic and a new special guest. I'm Christian Smith. I'm a player for the Texas Titans, and this episode we are going in the pits with Dan Shelley, the man behind Shellda Photos and author of the upcoming children's book, A Dragon's Journey to Dynasty. Dan, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. It's been nonstop here in Texas for the month of October, as I'm sure you're well aware. And now that's over, and the grind for Cup, the lead up to that, has just started. So it's really a nonstop ride all the way through the second weekend in November.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like we go through this roller coaster every few months, right? Where like there's a little bit of a lull, and then you start to like kind of feel, okay, like the next NXL event is coming around, or the next Bunkerfest event is coming around, and it just kind of like spikes that excitement back up. And so we're right there. I think next week we get the layout drop, so we can see what craziness they're going to do for us at Cup, and can't wait for it.
Yep, that's the beauty of having so many events in Texas. We've got 3 major series as well as a couple of other local ones, and it's just nonstop action. Whatever you want to do in Texas, you can do it pretty much year round. And like even in December and January, I know that Star Series is going to be kicking up, as well as something I'm going to be announcing soon, hopefully this week. So stay tuned for that.
Breaking news.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started here. So this first one is brought to us by XTPL Events. So Dan, for those listening that maybe don't know about you personally, how long have you been involved in the Texas paintball scene?
A very short period of time. We're actually coming up on just about a year of me getting involved in the Texas paintball scene. I want to say it was like early November or mid-November when I started to have the itch again to play, because I haven't played in about 10 or 15 years. And I jumped online and started to look around and at the different fields. And like, well, Paintball Fit looks amazing. It's 2 hours, for me in Austin. Everything was just far. And I kept seeing this field called Outlaw, and there was no real online presence. I think Google said it was closed down. I was like, oh, that's so unfortunate, because that field is literally on the same road where I live. And then I think, it was right around the same week that Notorious won World Cup. And in one of the posts, they had mentioned Outlaw Paintball. I'm like, ooh, wait a second. That's that field that I was talking about. And then, I got hooked up with Mark Franz. And I was like, hey, I'm an old guy. I'm looking to get back in the sport. And he had me come out on a weekend, so I didn't have any gear. And I think this was maybe now about early December. And the first time I played was in shorts and a t-shirt, so I felt like I was that typical walk-on that you see, like, oh, this guy's never played before. And it's picked up ever since.
So you mentioned having not played in quite a long time. What is your history as a player?
Yeah, so about, I want to say I've been kind of involved or a fan of the sport, I would say, for the better part of 23 years, which sounds old to a lot of people. I started playing up in Connecticut, where I grew up, and I started in my backyard. Like a lot of people start with a birthday party. I actually started in my backyard with some friends and even my mom. Some friends at school were playing, and it sounded really cool. And so I convinced her to go to Walmart and get a paintball gun. And that's when they had, some may know of the Brass Eagle, the Talon. It's like a pump gun with a plastic CO2 cartridge. Well, she was like, well, if you're going to play this, I'm going to play this with you. And so my mom and I both got paintball guns, and it was cool. I got to not only play with my group of friends, but my mom was out there every weekend playing too. And then, like the typical progression, I started to go to the Walmart and see like the magazines like Paintball 2 Extreme and Faceful. I was like, what's this tournament side? And then did a search. I don't know how I did it, because we didn't have Google back then, I don't think. But I found Mounts Outback Paintball, which is where like Harrison Fry from Dynasty practices out of, and like I think Keith Devitt practices out of, and Enrique, the media guy, shoots there. And then so that's my weekend started to be about an hour drive to Matt's Outback Paintball. Jumped on some local 3-mans, played the 3-man scene for a few years. And then when I was getting into high school, I jumped on a 7-man team, nothing that nobody knows, a team called Conspiracy at the time. and we played, I think this was 04, 04 or 05. We played in NPPL, the Super 7 in Denver and in Tampa. And then it was a wild time. Like that's when the tournaments were in the parking lots of like NFL stadiums. And so, the one in Denver, we're playing the backdrop of the Broncos stadium, and they had the Warp Tour going on that same week inside the stadium. So like you're playing paintball while you're kind of listening to music. And so it was just a wild time. That's when like, WDP and like the Angel Girls, they had, kind of that whole scene there. And then, I got into college, and like a lot of folks, college is pretty expensive. And so I, put the marker down for a while. But I never stopped watching. I was just I stayed on PB Nation, up to date with all the players, and I never missed an event watching online or, catching the magazines. So, I played and then became a fan for a while. And then here recently played again, realized my body can't take it anymore, and then transitioned to picking up a camera.
Oh, I love it. There's not too many of us that are not birthday party people. I was more or less a backyard person, but I kind of made the jump from Nerf all the way up to paintball, and that was kind of my thing. I was always a fan of that stuff. But what was it? And this question's brought to us by Skull Monkeys Paintball. What was it that kind of like brought you back in this past year?
Yeah, so great question. So before I moved to Austin, Texas, I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, and disc golf, or like frisbee golf, some people know it. It's like the mecca there, like where paintball is here. It's kind of that thing in Charlotte. And I got super into that. Had like a great group of friends. We were playing every week. It got to the point where like we were in each other's weddings, and when I moved here, I was missing that like community. And so I, tried to play disc golf here, and it wasn't the same. Like the courses weren't the same. It wasn't the same feeling or the same vibe. And then I was like, man, I miss playing paintball so much. I miss being around that community. I miss just showing up on Sundays, and who knows what everyone else does, 9 to 5 throughout the week or whatever their job is. But like you show up and you're all friends, you're all connected. And so that's what got me like the itch of, hey, let me go make some friends, because I didn't really know many people when I moved here, other than some coworkers and colleagues.
Well, you definitely picked a great state to get back into it in. So
I know.
Yep, Texas has definitely been booming over the last probably 5-6 years at this point. Really, we're seeing the fruits of that this year. So this question is brought to us by Podrunners Union. Shout out to Sasha Zucker. So what are some things that you've noticed kind of from when you started playing paintball to now? What are some of the things that you've seen that have changed over time, either for better or for worse?
Man, that's a tough question. Like anything, you're always gonna like it's like a cycle, right? Where I always kind of attribute things, like if you look at jeans, jeans go from like baggy to like slim fit, and like now it looks like we're kind of going back to that baggy trend. You kind of see the similar thing with paintball, where we're going through these cycles of different formats that we're trying. Like we'll find something and we'll stick to it for X amount of years, and then something will happen where we want to try to take paintball to the whatever level we want to take it to. And then we try to explore different formats, like what we're doing now, with having that new buzzer at the 50. So I think for better, for sure, is the media. Like when I first started playing, before I had the gray hairs, the media was, you get a magazine once a month, and then whatever VHS tapes that would come out at the time, like your old, Dirters and whatnot, and the Sunday Drivers. And so now, you can open up your phone and you have just reels all over the place and photos all over the place. So we're getting more eyeballs on the sport, and I think that's probably the most important thing, the biggest change over the years.
Yeah, there's no question that there's no shortage of media surrounding paintball, at least at this time. I think the last 2 years, we've really seen it explode with some people like coming out of nowhere and very quickly like putting their name on the map, not just locally here in Texas, but nationally. Like guys like Verbal, Brian Wolf. You got guys like Carlos, Get That Shot, yourself, other people like across the U.S. It really was just a few. Like I could probably count like the main names on one hand, guys like Stretch, like Solus Studios, and now it's like you can't even count. There's like probably 6 to 10 just in Texas alone. And they're all like really like putting out quality content and covering very different areas of the country, either different leagues, locally, nationally, different divisions. And it's great to see like just how available it is now.
Yeah, I think we used to do a good job of, and I haven't seen it in a few years, but I think maybe the NXL did it. They would show a map of like the United States of where the teams come from. I think it'd be really cool to see that, but just for media, because there'll be guys at World Cup that live in the Northeast, like up in Maine, like you're almost in Canada at that point. And then we've got, I think Smiley Joe is in Massachusetts, Enrique's in, New York, Connecticut area. It's like people are flying all over the country just to shoot the sport. So it's crazy to see how big the media side has got.
Definitely. And especially with how more accessible and how quickly the technology is improving within drones. We're seeing a lot more like really, really amazing clips, not just from these media people, but from the leagues themselves.
Yeah. I haven't seen it yet, but I think on the, Speak and Span show last night, Oliver was talking, or I think Oliver or maybe Tommy was talking about somebody had an FPV drone that they were like flying through the bunkers, trying to get some of the shots of it. To think about 10 years ago, we probably didn't even have a drone. And if somebody's like, hey, I want to use a drone to capture a tournament, people probably thought they were crazy. Now that's such an integral part of our sport because it gives it that whole different aspect, a whole different view.
Definitely. And especially with how the battery life is improving in these drones. Like I remember just a year or two ago, the batteries were about like 10 to 15 minutes. Now you can get a good 40 to 45 minutes off of a single battery. So that's basically an entire match that you can record right there. So it's becoming much more, easy to work with. And I think that drones are going to be a way of the future as far as recording some of this sick footage.
Yeah, I totally agree because, you can have drones at all different levels. You can even have, 4 drones at different parts of the field at any point, switch to it and get, different camera angles of a player, running down the highway, and you're getting a first person view, then you get the side angle. So it would even be cool if at some point, we got to a point with media and cameras where we're able to use replay, like right there in the moment, where if, someone hit a buzzer and like, wait a minute, the referee called them out, but we're pretty sure there was a second left. Maybe we can go right to back to those cameras and start having replay in it.
Oh, definitely. So real quick, looking at the chat, we've got a lot of people here, showing some love. Welcome everybody. Let's see. We've got, Get That Shot says about to watch a goat. Lasro Lopez saying what up. Chris Harrison's in here. What's up, Chris? Yep. Carlos saying can't wait for World Cup. A lot of people showing you some love. Tanner Pagel, Cody Kipp, Jay Saldana, Angie Tejeda. See who else is in here. Yep, that's it so far. So awesome. Y'all, if you have any questions that you want to ask Dan,
sure.
Be sure to get them in the chat. We'll get to them throughout the show. So this next question is brought to us by Bem Raps. So this year, as you've gotten back into it, you've really taken your photography page, like not just starting it up, but like really taking it to the next level very quickly, which is, for anybody who doesn't know, his photography page is Shellda Photos. And you've quickly made your way onto the pro field at the NXL. So what was it that got you into the media side of the sport?
So like I love to tell the story, but I also hate it at the same time. So I mentioned earlier that like I got back to playing and I jumped on, and I think I saw Cody in here. I jumped on his D5 line and played for a few weekends. But then I get home and like my body couldn't take it. So I literally had like the heating pad out, I had the ice out, and like my recovery time just wasn't what it used to be. And so I was like, you know what? I still want to be involved in it, and there's got to be some way I can be involved. And so I think the D5 line had like the first 3-man tournament of the year at Paintball Fit. And I was like, well, let me try to coach. Can't be that hard, coach 3-man. And I've seen technology kind of come into the sport over the years, but I haven't seen any coaches use an iPad yet. And so what I did is all the layouts for that weekend, I downloaded them all on my iPad. We had plans that we were going through, and then one of the other notorious coaches came over and took my iPad and was like, "Yeah, let me try this play," and like just started to pretty much scribble on everything and just erased like all of my stuff. I was like, well, you know what? Maybe this coaching thing is not for me. And then the next weekend, I started to follow some of the local accounts that I didn't follow before, and I happened to start looking at the Notorious account, and I started to talk to Mark Franz. I was like, I think there's an opportunity here for us to really help grow your brand. Now that you're on the pro level, you've got a huge opportunity. You've got a lot of eyeballs looking at your brand. And so it took a little persuading to help out, but he let me take over the account for a few months. And so I literally got out there, with my iPhone and was taking photos. I was sitting behind bunkers taking photos, and I just realized that wasn't cutting it. And I went to a weekend getaway with my fiance, and I was telling her, like, I really enjoy this. I really enjoy being back in the sport. I think there's an opportunity here for us to travel a little bit, and to kind of have some fun along the way. And that was the Sunday before the first NXL event. And so she was like, she supported it. She was absolutely incredible, completely supported it. She was like, yeah, go for it. So we drove home. I overnighted a camera, and I jumped on NXL's website. They had like a $50 media pass that you can sign up for. So I purchased that, and I think I was talking with Verbal at the time, and maybe get that shot too. I was like, hey, I can't wait to meet you guys in person. I'll see you next week. And Verbal's like, well, wait a minute, like whose pass are you using to get on the pro field? I'm like, oh, I just bought this pass. He was like, dude, that's for divisionals. So you need like a $35,000 platinum sponsorship to get on the pro field. And so I started to freak out, because we're getting ready to drive to Florida. We have a camera coming that I've never used before. And so I emailed Tom and explained the whole situation of like, hey, I just took over this Notorious account. I'm going to help, get some content for them to use. And he literally called me within 5 minutes, and he was like, hey, show up on Friday and we'll figure it out. And so we drove to Florida not knowing what the plan was, walked up to the media booth to sign in. They had no idea who I was. And that was the first time I stepped on a field with like a actual professional setup. And I think Notorious was the first set of the day too, because they're, brand new team. And then I came off the field, and I'm like, man, like I need a place to kind of put all of this content, for my own content. And so right there at the NXL field, I created Shellda photos on Instagram and posted my first photo right there. And it's just kind of exploded ever since.
And you jumped into the deep end just very quickly, didn't you?
Yeah, that's whenever I get into like a hobby, I go all in. There's no like renting gear. It's I go in for the best of the best. So it's got its pros and cons.
Well, that's definitely a way to do that. If you're gonna make the journey anyway, you might as well jump right in, get as much time as you can. Man, like your first like event shooting experience is on the pro field for your local pro team. That's insane.
That weekend was like, it was just so many ups and downs. I came off the field after the Notorious set, and I was set up with all the Notorious guys near the Max booth. And Charles from Max is just an absolutely incredible human being. Like, he took my camera. I was like, hey, this is kind of crooked. Like, you're not lining up your shots here. And so like, he just instantly gave me so much feedback. And it kind of hurt a little bit, like, damn, like I actually don't know what the hell I'm doing, and here I am like on this grand scale. And so as I'm walking away to like go back on the field, Smiley Joe, one of the other media guys I mentioned, he literally, I'll never forget it. He ran up to me and he was like, "Hey Dan, hang on a second." He was like, "I just saw you do something, and like I've never seen anybody do that before." He was like, "Go keep doing that." And it's like it just instantly boosted my confidence. And so I attribute a lot of like that confidence to that one interaction right there, because I was starting to walk back like, what the heck am I doing? Like, am I way in over my head in this whole entire thing? So yeah, it was just a crazy journey. And then that was Friday. And then Saturday, I'll never forget this. It was so embarrassing, but like I laugh about it now. You get to the field for like the first match or two of the day. I'm on the match for the third set of the day. One of the media guys, again, never met him before until that event. He comes up to me on the field and he was like, "Hey, do you know your shirt's on backwards?" I was like, "Oh my God." So I had the huge like NXL Pro media on my chest that shimmied my back, and so it was like it just brought my confidence right back down. So it was definitely a roller coaster of emotions for that weekend.
It's crazy. If I may ask, what was that one thing that that they told you that you were doing that no one else was doing?
It was getting low. I had noticed most of the media guys were either standing up or like on their knees. And I just remember like I'm a huge NFL fan, and I love shots where you're kind of low looking up at the player, where you can kind of see some of the turf a little bit. And whenever I see like paintball media, you don't really see a lot of low shots, or like if someone's diving, kind of looks like this weird angle, like a plane's landing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, well, let me try to get lower than anybody else, and maybe that'll help make my stuff a little bit different. And so for the rest of the event, I literally would just go find a spot, lay down, and shoot up a little bit. And that I've done that ever since. Like that's why if you ever see me at an event, if I look like I just got done diving to the snake 10 or 15 times because I'm just destroyed. I'm covered in mud, but that's where I get my best shots.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah, that's some great advice that was given to you, and I definitely see it in some of your content. That angle is super sick, especially if you catch the players either diving into the snake or diving into the Doritos. Like those are some great angles.
Yeah.
So this next question is brought to us by Mariachi Aguilas de Oro. So you travel a lot for your photography. You attended a bunch of different leagues, including Bunkerfest, USXBL, NXL. You attended the Hormesis 1v1 event. You've even gone to an XTPL event or two. So what does your schedule look like in an average month?
Busy. So like I think this summer, when there's like an NXL event, it's bonkers because we'll have the layout drop the weekend before, and as silly as it sounds, like I look forward to that just as much as the players do. And I think I've even posted it a few months ago when one of the layouts dropped. I literally will look at the different lanes and be like, okay, where might I see a lot of paint coming from? Like, what are some zones I want to look out for? What are some potential like shots or like breaks where players are going to come right at me? And so there's a lot of prep work for me that goes into like kind of a layout weekend. But it's usually, if there's not an event, at Outlaw Paintball on Sunday mornings for a few hours. That's where I kind of practice different settings and different angles. But then, there's weekends where you've got back to back to back. I think earlier this summer we had Bunkerfest, and then USXBL was the following weekend. And then usually like the weekend after that is like an XTPL or, one of the other events that Paintball fit. So to not like overload myself, I usually will pick 2 major events per month and stick to that. And so it kind of worked out to where, of course, NXL was a given, right? NXL was the primary one. And then Bunkerfest, well, those are the 2 that would go after it. And then if I could squeeze in some USXBLs, I would jump up there too. But pretty busy. And then, that's just shooting on the weekends. And then you're coming home and dumping footage and, thousands and thousands of photos to edit and go through.
Yep. It's definitely a long process, especially with the amount of content that you're working with. I'm sure that there's plenty of teams out there that have booked you over the course of this year, especially as you've kind of gained more notoriety. So walk me, speaking of that process, and this one is brought to us by Paintball Kumite. So walk me through, what does it look like from beginning to end for your process, starting with when the team books you and then ending when you deliver the final product or the final batch of files to them?
Yeah, great question. So when the team books me, I usually will do some type of like deposit, just to make sure I can hold their spot and that make sure they're committed to me. I let them know what I offer. And so, I think this is the cool part about like having so many different media people out there, is people offer so many different packages. Like some folks will do different like raw footage or reels or like a set amount of photos. I don't ever, I'll never say, hey, I'm going to deliver 200 photos, because then that just puts pressure on me to like, I have to just shoot content. And like I kind of lose my art from it. I kind of lose my like that flair that I go for. And so after I book a team, I usually try to stick to 3 or 4, because some of these leagues, like if they get behind schedule on one of their fields, like it just destroys my schedule. But after I have those 3 or 4 teams booked, I'll show up to the field, and usually the night before in the hotel, I'll jump on PB Leagues and I'll map out the schedule for those 3 or 4 teams, like, what time, of course, early to late, what field. And then like, it's a weird pro tip that not a lot of people do, is like, I'll actually save that as my screensaver in my iPhone. And so like, I can just come off the field, I don't have to unlock anything as I'm wearing gloves, just look at my phone and I can see my schedule right there. So that's a little pro tip for the media family out there. So that's leading up to the event. And then, throughout the event, I'll hang out with the teams as much as I can. I try to split up my time evenly. That way I can get, some off the field shots. I'll try to get an idea, like if it's a new team that I haven't worked with before, I'll try to familiarize myself with their faces or like what they're wearing. That way, as I'm walking around the pits and the vendors, if I see them, I can take some of those cool candid shots. And then it's just, hanging out with them, encouraging them when they're on and off the field. And then when I get home, I try to have all of my photos edited and delivered to the teams by like Thursday. So it's a little bit of a grind for a few days, but I put myself through that because I think about it from a player's perspective. Like, you just spent so much money. Maybe you won or you podium, like you want that content so bad, like you want it while it's still so fresh. And so that's why I work pretty hard to kind of get that content out before the week's over.
Right. And as far as like getting the content out, do you have any, what programs do you use? Do you have any presets that help you out with any of that? Like, tell me a little bit more like about the, not the shooting, but like the kind of the editing portion.
Sure. So I use Lightroom, and I have to give like a huge kudos to Carlos or Get That Shot. When I first started, I had used Lightroom to like edit just random stuff over the years. And he just gave me so much feedback and constructive criticism of like different colors and different shadows to play with. And like, he even sent me like videos, like walking through his settings, and he even sent me one of his presets that he used. And so I used that for, probably about the first half of the year. And then when I finally got comfortable, like with my settings, I started to build my own presets based off of different like weather conditions and different team colors. I'll even make a preset like per event too. And so I'm at the point now where, again, thanks to Carlos, where I can edit a photo probably in 5 or 6 seconds. I can throw a preset on it, tweak a little few of the filters here and there. And kind of, if I'm not as stable, I might have to like kind of stabilize it a little bit and crop it in. But what I'll do is I'll have a folder on my hard drive for the teams that I am editing for, and I literally go through one by one. I know people think that's crazy, and like, you can batch edit, but I literally go through every single photo. It's a lot of just clicking next to find that right one. But when I find that right one, that's what I'll call like the banger, right? That's where you get the puff of smoke, or you get the paintball that's frozen right in the middle of the air. And then I'll dump that in the folder. That way, when I go to upload it to my website, it's just literally a one-click mass upload, and it uploads all the albums.
Cool. So about, I guess, as you're going through your editing process, about how many photos would you say you usually have to start with, and then how many on average do you put like in your final folder to deliver?
So for what was the last event? For Bunker Fest, I want to say I ended up with, it was like, I think somewhere in the ballpark of 20,000 photos, I think, for the weekend. And that was with 3 teams. And then per team after that, I think somewhere in the ballpark of, on the low end, 85. And I think on the high end, about 180, 185, depending on the teams. So like, there's a lot of just wasted photos where the camera that I use, it shoots 30 frames per second, or like in, kind of dumb it down, it shoots 30 pictures per second. And so if when the buzzer goes off, if I'm looking at a player running straight at me, that could be 200 or 300 pictures. So like to find that right one where like the mud is flying up, maybe I can get some paint in the air too. It takes a lot. It's a cheat code essentially, but it takes a lot of like finding that right exact moment to get that picture.
So you're like, as far as the number of photos you take versus the number of ones that get delivered, it's like less than 10% that the players ever see.
Yep.
That is a big cut there. So this question is brought to us by YI Paintball, someone you're very familiar with there. This question, what equipment do you use? And do you have any tips for any beginners looking to get into shooting photo or video for paintball?
So first of all, great question. Why paintball? I actually have 2 different cameras. And that wasn't the plan going into the season. I started off with the Sony A7 IV, and I got that one because I did a little bit of YouTube last year, just kind of on the side, like, nothing crazy. But I used that particular camera body because it had a great option for photos. And it had great options for video too, if I ever wanted to get into that. And that got me through the first NXL event, I think, of Bunker Fest. And then I went to Paintball Fit, had their Easter event. I had some great photos throughout the morning, and they were about to do like their main event of the day, where like they went on to like the backfield. Everyone had baskets and they had like Easter eggs all over the field. I went on the field, and as JD was like counting down to start the game, my camera wouldn't work. Like my shutter would it just stopped working. And so like I got off the field, and like I tried to like reset everything, didn't work. I quickly Google searched like, hey, what does this mean? And everything that I read was like, you have to send in your camera for repair. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And so I got home, so I missed that whole entire segment. And so I got home, and I looked up the repair, and it was like, I think 3 or 4 weeks. And it was right around where like I would have missed, I wouldn't have gotten it back in time for the second NXL event. And so I reached out to get that shot, and I was like kind of panicking. And he was like, hey, like, you've got this next, you're right here with the camera. You can go up a little bit more, spend a little bit more, and get the Sony A1. And that's where you can get that 30 frames per second. And so like it took so much like convincing, and like he and I went back and forth so much of like of it's being worth it. And I ended up pulling the trigger on it, and that's been the best decision I've made so far, because it's just, being able to take that many pictures per second, it's unreal. And then I use which is pretty standard for a lot of the paintball photographers. I use a 70 to 200 millimeter lens with a f.28, and so like I can get pretty nice blurred out background. Then I can punch in, across the field as well, so I can get that, really far shot. So that lens for me has been a game changer. A lot of the media guys will carry around 2 lenses, and they'll use like a different lens for the in the pits stuff. But I like to use that one and just get creative. So I'll sit really far away in the pits and wait and then I kind of disappear in the crowd, but then I can get like those really cool moments. And then for the second part of your question, it was what
just any tips for any beginners looking to get into either photo or video for paintball?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like anything, right? Just start. But these last 2 or 3 months has been kind of like I can't describe it. It's just been like a weird whirlwind because I've had a few local media guys from the Outlaw area who have reached out, and one offered to like be a not an ambassador, where he's like kind of a branched off of Shellda Photos. Like, hey, I would like love to work under your brand. So we kind of turned that into, hey, I kind of want to do my own solo thing, but I don't mind being like your mentor. And so now I think it's Jeremy Kahn. He'll send me like some of his photos, and I'll give him feedback on of like, hey, your color's a little off here, or like look at your angle, the way you're shooting at. And then another photographer reached out asking like, hey, what would you recommend? What gear you recommend? And everyone always says it's not about the gear. Like, you just got to get out there and do it. And so he was using like a kit lens, which doesn't really zoom in too far. Mm-hmm. And a lot of his photos he'd be like standing at the 50 and like taking photos of the Cobra, so it's so far away. And so I told him, like, if you're going to keep with that similar lens, just get closer, like go back to the Cobra and just shoot that one shot. So it's a really tight picture. So I guess in summary, just get out there and shoot. Your first hundreds or thousands of photos you're gonna hate them all, but that's where you can start to learn and like ask the media people like, hey, what feedback can you give me? And everyone is so incredibly open to helping the media grow. There hasn't been a single media person I haven't asked, and everyone's just giving me so much advice. And so I try to give that back when I can to people that reach out to me.
For sure. Love it. So looking at the chat right here, we do have a question from Last Row Lopez. His question is, what is your snack and hydration tips for new media people?
Transfuse. I live on Transfuse throughout the weekend, especially like here in Austin or in Texas. I didn't realize how I've been here since COVID. I didn't realize how hot it was until you like put on a paintball mask, and then you step on the turf. And then not only that, like I lay on the turf, and it's like I'm literally laying on it. And so I will literally bring a case of water with me throughout the weekend, or even some days I'll drink the whole entire thing, and like I'm not sweating at all. So if I didn't have Transfuse, like there's been times where like I feel like I'm gonna pass out. Like that's really helped propel me. And then I always have what are they? The Kind bars. I always have those in my bags because I don't really eat a lot at events. I know like they have like a lunch break, but that's usually where I'm going and like either dumping footage or charging batteries. And so it's really just like snacking throughout the events. But like that's where it's so cool. Like the teams that I worked with this year, like we've built such great relationships, really take care of me. They'll ask if I want food or snacks. And so I'll usually be able to like stop by their pit area and take some of their snacks too. So yeah, pro tip: take care of your media people that you hire, because we're always hungry and thirsty.
100%, definitely got to take care of them. All right, so before we move on from this kind of portion of the show, I've got to ask, what's with the puka shell thing?
Yeah, oh man. So typically I'd be wearing them, right? But Skylar Molina, you had him on last week from Notorious. I saw him at Bunkerfest, and he came up to me and gave me like this huge hug. He's like, He's like, man, I feel so bad. Like I went to order them right before the event, but like I couldn't get them in time, I think. And so I was like, you know what? Like, since you tried so hard, like I literally took mine off and like gave them to him. And so somebody, I think it was maybe Travis Patton, like took a video of like me like knighting him, like putting the puka shells on there. So Skylar has my puka shells. I don't know if I'll have them back in time for Cup or not, but I definitely should get a pair. But where that all came from, back when I first started playing, I would get the magazines, and like it was all the pro teams in there were out of California. Like you had like the Iron Man, Dynasty, that was back when everyone had like the frosted tips and like the Huntington Beach vibes, where it's just all the surfer kids, and everyone just they were wearing puka shells, and I thought it was like the coolest thing. And so at the time, I think I went to probably either PacSun or like American Eagle and got a pair of puka shells, and I wore them like all throughout high school. It's like all my high school pictures I'm wearing puka shells. And then this year, I was at the field one weekend and I saw somebody wearing the old school like JT racing pants that have like the big JT logo on the. Yep. I saw those and it just brought back so much nostalgia, because those were like the hot item back then, and they still are. But I was like, man, what can we do? Like, what kind of trend can we bring back? And I was like, I gotta bring the puka shells back. And so I started to wear them at the field, and it was just the wildest thing seeing like other people order them and then like send me like their order confirmations like through Instagram, and like they're tagging me in pictures. And then when I see people at the field, like now they're like, they walk by with their necklace and like they kind of, shake it a little bit. And one of the probably coolest moments for that is I had a younger player come up to me. He's like, hey, he was wearing it. He was like, dude, I had no idea what these meant, but like my dad saw it, and my dad used to wear them when he played. And so like, it was a cool homage for me to like honor his dad. So it's crazy, it's just like one little silly trend, and it's people from all over the country are kind of behind it.
Well, it's definitely been different trend that's made its way to Texas, but I'm glad that it's starting to catch on. All right, so this next, go ahead.
I'll say we even have so Charles through Max, we made a Puka Gang tank tee or tech tee, and then we also made a Puka Gang practice jersey that a few guys ordered those too. It's like there's a few guys in California that have them. Nene from Notorious has it. So you'll see those pictures at some point this week as well. They look really sharp.
Awesome. Can't wait to see them. Okay, so this next question is brought to us by FU Athletics. So throughout your entire career, do you have a single favorite moment so far?
There's two, I think. If I can give you two, I think. So I've always been a Dynasty fan. I had posters of those guys on my walls when I was a kid. And to be able to, go to the first NXL event in Florida, and like the first pictures that I took, like were of them, and then to take photos of them, like winning and like, popping the champagne and like celebrating. It was just like, it was such a special, surreal moment that like I'll never forget. So that was probably my number one up until Philly. It was the very, and NXL media, close your ears. The very last match of the day, it was X Factor, I think, was playing Damage, I think, and I think that's one that came down to the one-on-one. Oliver was sitting in the pits, just like right in the middle of the two pits, like kind of right where the media was. He was sitting on a cooler by himself. And the match was about to start, and I walked over, I sat next to him, and we've talked a bunch. He's like, gave me some feedback with the books and the headbands. And we just like had just the wildest in-depth conversation. And so I didn't take a single picture of that whole entire final match. Like we sat there for that 20 minutes and just talked. And it was just the coolest experience. Like I'll never forget. Like, it's all about like, hey, a photo can say 1,000 words, right? But like in that moment, it was not taking a photo, and like it's that memory that I'll cherish that conversation for the rest of my life. It was the coolest thing.
Yeah, Oliver's I've had a similar experience where he was just willing to sit down and have a conversation with me, and it was actually during the layout weekend for World Cup last year. It was like right after he announced, or it was announced that he was coming back. And it was the coolest thing, just getting to sit down with him.
Yeah, he'll sit down and talk to anybody. He's just such an incredible human being. There's not many people out there that are like him. Super quick, I just thought of this. It's up there in my favorite moments. I think this was at Philly or Chicago. Archie Barnes Jr. of Notorious sent me a text, and he was like, "Hey, we're playing Dynasty for I think the first time in their pro career, or the Notorious pro career." He's always looked up to Archie Montemayor of Dynasty. He was like, "If at some point you can capture a photo of us after, like that would mean the world to me." And you want to talk about like manifesting that moment and like all, the moon's lining and the world's coming together. After the match is over, they happen to be the first two players walking across the field to like kind of meet and give each other high fives. And just the way I happened to be positioned at the time, like I got them hugging and embracing. And like when I showed Archie that picture, like I literally saw goosebumps stand up. And he's a quiet person, like Archie Barnes. You can kind of see him like get a little emotional, like just how special that picture was. And then he ended up printing it out, and like that's hanging up in his house, in California. So that's also a really touching moment too for me.
I love that. That's great. The moments that we're able to capture, and usually the more important ones aren't on the field, but they're not during games, but after the games or in between.
Yeah, I mean that's two of my favorite photos are from after matches.
For sure. All right. So this next question is brought to us by Hydra. So you have your second children's book coming out here pretty soon, which is A Dragon's Journey to Dynasty. So do you have a background in writing? What was it that got you inspired to begin writing books for children?
No. So no background at all. Well, a little bit. So my first book, The Lost Orb, I wrote that last summer. And where that came about is in the Northeast off of Connecticut, where I grew up, there's an island called Block Island. And it's always been like such a special place for my mom. It's always been like a place where she goes to, like, just kind of release, and like it's just always been like her place. She 2 or 3 years ago now, she was diagnosed with cancer. And I went up there last year, and I went to that place for the very first time with her. And there's an artist that goes around the island and like hides these little glass orbs, and it's like a cult following. Like people go to the island just like hunt for them. And as we're like driving around the island talking about it, it just kind of hit. Like I had this idea in that moment where like, oh my God, like let me do a children's story, and I can dedicate it to her, like, kind of give that gift for her of being such a special place. And so I've always heard of like, music artists say like, this song came to me in the middle of the night, or like I was doing something and like all the lyrics came to me, and I was always like, that's complete bullshit. That never happens. Well, it actually happened. And so we went back to like our little cottage, and I got my laptop out, and I literally typed almost verbatim the whole entire thing out in about 45 minutes. And that's how it started. And so, that book did pretty well up there. And then this year, getting back into paintball, I just, I keep hearing like, we got to grow the sport. We have to grow the sport. And everyone talks about like the median age of paintball is getting higher. Like, I think the average pro team age is like, I think it might be in the 30s now, either 30s or high 20s.
I think it's definitely in the 30s.
Yeah. And so if we think, that's getting higher, right? And so if we don't do things to get that down, we're going to lose that pro, bracket eventually, if they keep continuing down this trend. And so I was thinking like, there's gotta be something I can do to help. And I was walking around, I think, or I was watching an event, and I saw like a Gel Blasters ad, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. We're doing cool things for kids with Gel Blasters. But then I'm like, why stop there? Like, that's a great age for like 7, 10. I think that's their age range they're going for. I was like, why not go younger than that? And then, so I had an idea of, doing a paintball book, and I kind of like had the concepts kind of figured out in my head. And I had Ryan Greenspan's email from years ago. Like, I'm talking, I think I was probably a teenager, and I think I emailed him like probably asking for his autograph or like something stupid like that. And I sent him an email. I was like, hey, you probably don't remember me, but like, this is what I'm trying to do. This is before I met him, at the NXL event through all the photo stuff. I was like, I would love to, collaborate on a children's book. And he's like, yeah, totally down. And so like I'll never forget reading that email, like, oh shit, this is real. Like he actually wants to do this. And it was just the coolest experience this whole entire year. I sent him the script back and forth, and we, collaborated on some different tweaks and different changes. And every time I got one of the images, I would send it to him, and we would just go back and forth on some small changes. And so I have to give like such huge kudos to him because he was so involved like in this process. It wasn't just like this, so like, yeah, this is cool. Like he had so much feedback throughout the whole entire process of the book. And so, I hope that this will help get some players onto the field at a little bit of a younger age. And I've, given some what's called advanced reader copies. I've given some of those out to like some parents that I know. And like I've heard they just come back and say it's the coolest thing to be able to come home from practice on the weekends. And like now they can talk about paintball like with their younger kids. Now it's not like, hey, this is like really scary. Well, it's, hey, let me show you what Cooper is. He's a little kid that you can connect to. And so it's really cool. I hope we can help grow the sport at that younger age. And I'll never make it on the pro field per se of like playing, but like that's the gift that I can give back to the sport that's given me so much my whole entire life.
Absolutely. So what was the inspiration behind the book, and what was it like getting like collaborating with the entire Dynasty organization?
So the inspiration, I kind of touched on it, was helping grow paintball at a younger age. But as I was writing it, I kind of was like, I had this light bulb moment, like, wow, this is exactly what I went through when I was a kid playing for the first time, where like I was so nervous and scared. Like you go on the field for the first time and you're like, I don't want to get shot, And so you go through so many emotions. And so it was really cool. It was like a really good outlet to like let that out throughout the story. Because I think, we experience that in our adult life too, whether you're going into a really big meeting at work and you're having to give this big presentation, you have those same exact nerves that you have when you step on the field for the very first time. And so the story talks about that journey and how to overcome that. But working with the team, it was the coolest thing. Like at some point in the summer, I looked down at my phone, I kind of had like this, oh shit moment. Like there's a text message from Alex Fragi, from Ryan Greenspan, and like I think Yosh at the time. And it was just the wildest thing to know, like I was interacting with these guys, on a text message basis. And then I threw the idea out of, throughout the story, I'll show you, throughout the story, Cooper and Ryan are wearing a headband. And I reached out to Oliver. I'm like, hey, would you be down to like collaborate on a Hormesis headband for the story? And he was 100% on board with it. And so they actually made a Hormesis headband called the Inner Dragon. It's the same headband that Ryan and the main character wear throughout the story. And they were 100% on board with it. And so it was cool to like collaborate with them throughout the whole entire year. While Oliver was in Bali, so like I'd have to wake up sometimes at 1 or 2 in the morning to text from Oliver and like text back really quick before I missed him. And so they're all super easy to work with. They're all down to earth guys that have the same idea that I do. They want to just help grow the sport and help see this incredible thing continue to grow.
And that's it's quite the opportunity that you created for yourself there, and that's so cool that there's a corresponding Hormesis headband that kind of comes along with it. Like how many of the headbands were made, and where can everybody listening go to order your book?
Yeah, so I think I want to say they did a pretty high number. I want to say it's like 175 maybe of these. So I know we tried to do a bigger quantity to hopefully not make it like a rare headband, but like make it to where it's more accessible, where we can get these like on kids' heads. That way, like, when the kids are seeing the book, they can go and play with the same exact headband that they're seeing. But the book officially launches the Friday at World Cup. I'll have 50 copies in person at World Cup. It's available for pre-order now on Amazon. So you can head over to Amazon and pre-order that. My hope is we can get this book to be #1 in, there's a bunch of different like children's categories. I think it'd be pretty wild just for the whole entire industry to say, hey, we have a #1 children's book and it's a paintball themed book. I think it would help bring some cool light to the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I'm gonna be purchasing some copies. I am a former elementary school teacher, but yeah. I've still got some connections with some of the schools that I used to work at, so I'm definitely going to be dropping some copies off there. Let's see where the book is sitting at right now.
Yeah, so I looked earlier. If you look under new releases, I think there's one category. It's like Dragons something, and I think it was like 600 something. But if you go to the new releases under that category, it was sitting at like number 24 for a while. And that's just...
Is this on Amazon, or where am I looking exactly for the categories?
Yeah, that's on Amazon.
Okay.
Let's see if I can find it with you quick. And I'm pretty sure like once it actually launches, like those numbers will skyrocket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so right now, just in books, in children's animal books, it's sitting at 18,000. Children's action adventure books, it's at 9,000. But then if you go to like the new releases, which is what it is, under the Dragons category, I think it's 30 or 34. So like to be in the top 100 of a category is just absurd with the amount of books that are on Amazon.
And it's quite an accomplishment there, and hopefully we can help to get those numbers up.
I certainly hope so.
All right. Yeah, Chris Harrison in the chat is saying that Cooper is going to get his at World Cup.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually, I'll touch on that really quick. When Ryan and I were talking about different character names, we had probably 8 or 10 names that we kind of wanted to use, and like every few weeks we would go back to the name and like kind of whittle it down, and it came down to 3 names. And I think it was one of my first few weekends at Paintball Fit, and I just kept hearing about this kid Cooper. Never met him before, but like, hey, like there's this kid Cooper, and like he's incredible. And then so like just kind of listening and watching, I started to see him play, and I was like, that is exactly what I wish I had when I was his age. I wish I had that confidence to be able to play. And so that main character it's loosely based around, that first impression of seeing Cooper on the field. So I've talked to, Chris and his mom, and I don't know if he actually knows that yet. It's like, that would be kind of crazy for him to hear that.
So your main character in your story was inspired off of Cooper Harrison?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a huge honor there, and definitely deserving of it too.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of World Cup, looking ahead, World Cup is right around the corner. So what are your plans for both the event and the weekend practices that lead up to it?
It's going to be pretty busy. So leading up to it, I'll be at X Factor in San Antonio. Dynasty is going to be there scrimmaging. For sure X Factor. I don't know what the other team or 2 teams are going to be there. But that's going to be pretty cool because right now, well, they had on Dynasty's website, they had a bundle. It was like $100 and some odd where you could buy the book and the headband. And the book was going to be signed by Yosh, Alex, Oliver, and Ryan, and myself. And so they're bringing all those copies to X Factor that I'll be signing in person there. That way they can go back and ship those out. And then I'll, grab some photos of the, of all the teams there during that layout weekend. And that's where like I'll test out some of my angles of like what I really want to try to get at Cup. It's a practice weekend for me too. I'll see what works. What different layouts, different. It's so weird because like I don't know if some people like really consider this. When you go to an NXL pro field, that center 50, there's that referee tower. That takes off. It's like, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet wide, that we can't use, essentially, right? And so those are really important lanes to, get some cool content from. And so I actually go through that when I'm at I'll be at X Factor. I'll go through like trying envisioning, okay, where is this tower, and trying to, get shots where I think it would be, or like to block out certain shots. So that's going to be a pretty fun weekend, pretty busy. And then World Cup, I just found out that it's 4 days. I found out prelims start on Thursday, and I wasn't planning for that. And so we had to change our schedule around a little bit. But that's just going to be a crazy weekend of when I'm not on the pro field taking pictures. I'm going to be in the Dynasty booth selling copies of the book, and signing, autographs for the book too. So it's going to be a absolutely wild weekend. I can't wait for it. It's also my first World Cup. I've never been to a World Cup before. So like to have all of that happen, it's just like, I can't write a better script.
Oh yeah. And this is lining up to be a pretty spectacular World Cup already. So your book, is there a Dynasty booth, or is it the Hormesis booth? Where exactly will you be in?
Yeah, so it's the Dynasty booth. They have, I think they technically call it the Field 1 booth.
Okay.
Like, well, they'll have a bunch of the forces, but they have a lot of that's where the Dynasty signing always is. They have like their jerseys. Some of my actual pictures, my prints, will be in that booth as well. So I'll be there hanging out when I'm not on the pro field, selling books.
All right, very cool. Well, you'll have to come say hi. I think I'm going to be next door to you. I'll be in the project booth, which is inside of the Hormesis tent.
I will probably be taking the money I make from the book and spending it right on the project tent.
All right. Yeah, well, you'll definitely be seeing lots of me that weekend.
Yeah, good.
All right. Yeah, Chris Harrison, he's saying that Cooper doesn't really know about it yet, so it'll be awesome for him to learn about it at Cup. Well, Chris, make sure that Cooper doesn't listen to this episode until you're ready.
Yeah,
for
seriously. Don't show him until after.
Yeah, so anybody still with us in the chat, again, thank you for tuning in live. We're getting toward the end of our show, so last chance to get a question in for Dan. So, Dan, this next question is brought to us by Get That Shot. Message him on Facebook or Instagram for media coverage at NXL World Cup. He's booking teams now, so if you're still in need of media coverage, hit him up. So, Dan, is there anybody in Texas, either teams, players, brands, or projects that have caught your attention lately? Who do you think deserves more recognition for what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, Get That Shot. He has... I can't thank him enough for how much he has helped me this year with just answering the most basic questions that I've had. For the first event or two, like I was shooting in, the auto mode, like in the A that some people know. And he was like, dude, you got to get out of that. He was like, just go to the field, like rip the Band-Aid off, jump into manual, and like just go figure it out. And that was the best decision that I've made this year, is to jump into manual, because now like I'm changing settings on the fly based off of different, you turn really quick, or if the cloud coverage changes. It's like that was probably the best advice that anyone's given me. And so I definitely credit a lot to my work to Carlos for sure. But I think two other people I'd like to shout out, Wyatt Paintball, my fiance. She's absolutely crushing that side of the media. She didn't really know what paintball was this time last year. And she just stepped into this thing and just absolutely has taken it to another level. And it's something the sports needed for a long time, is to like hear people's stories. And not like, hey, I play to win, or like I'm on a team. It's like, no, like I play because I'm trying to stay sober, or I play because I deal with anxiety, and that's my outlet on the weekend. And so for her to be able to tap into like some of those players' stories has been just incredible. And, to hear like some of the, we'll call goats or icons in the industry to like give her kudos. Like I think Maddie Marshall called her out. Oliver has called her out a bunch of times. Alex Frages said that they love what she's doing. So it's so cool to see what she's doing with this. And like the wildest thing is like I'm down here in my office, shooting a paintball podcast. She's upstairs hosting her first like meeting, growing the Why Paintball team. So it's cool to see her grow. And then the last company I'll shout out, which he's not new, but like he just needs more recognition, is Charles with Maxed. He does such incredible work for not only the Texas teams, but teams throughout the country. His products are amazing. There haven't been many people that I've worked with that have been just so open to giving feedback and being receptive to it. And I can reach out to him around the clock, and he's always responding. So it's been such a pleasure working with Charles on like all of my merchandise, my media jersey. He needs more recognition and needs more teams to wear his gear.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're a Texas team, especially, we've got a lot of great options in Texas to go to for gear. Charles is definitely one of them. And Charles also does his own media. So if you haven't watched he was responsible for the Notorious documentary at the start of the year, which was, I believe, 3 parts, if I remember correctly. Might have been 2 parts.
I think he was trying to do something per event, but I think something kind of fell off the wayside there. But I think it's definitely a 2 or 3 part thing.
Yeah, for sure. So go check him out. He also was on the show fairly recently. Yeah. He was, let's see, what episode was he exactly?
That was the Philly weekend, I think. He was in the hotel Chicago. He was already in Chicago for that weekend.
Yeah, September 13th and 14th. Yeah. That was Chicago weekend. So go hit up Charles Dean if you're in need of any soft goods. So looking at the chat one last time before we end our show. Let's see. Michael Perez says Puka Gang.
Yeah, he always wears his out there, Outlaw. Yeah, he's a good guy.
Let's see. Pretty much does it for everything in the chat.
Actually, you know what? One more shout out. You need a shout out, man. You're 5 subscribers away from 500. Like, you're coming up on a milestone.
Appreciate that.
That's pretty cool to see your growth out here. So for everyone in the chat, if you're not subscribed yet, let's get Christian to 500 tonight. That'd be cool.
Appreciate it. I'm just out here trying to build a spotlight to shine on others. That's my whole thing, because there's a lot of people, especially in Texas, that are doing some really cool things within the sport of paintball, and I think more coverage needs to be given, not just to pro players, pro teams, and the pro league. Like, there's a lot of great stories that we should get out there. So that's a whole motivation. 71 weeks and counting for this. So
it's so incredible. It's cool. Like, this is, that's why I was talking about, like, with Why Paintball, like, it's that exact thing. Like, we need to feature more people's stories, and maybe not the pros necessarily, but like some of the behind the scenes players, like the field owners. Like, so it's so incredible that you're giving these folks a platform to share their spotlight and share their stories too.
Definitely. And I mean, we do cover some pro players and teams from time to time on here, but it's just making sure that we kind of hit all areas of the sport and do it somewhat evenly. So I think that just about does it for our show. This final question is brought to us by Compete, which is Jell Stewart's brand, another great Texas brand for gear and soft goods. So message him on Facebook or Instagram, mention In the Pits for 10% off of your order. So Dan, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any last shout outs or things you'd like to say before we sign off?
Yeah, just I'm so thankful for this community. JD said something a few months ago, and it's like it literally struck a nerve in a good way. He said paintball is life and life is paintball, and like that quote, I literally think about it every single day while I'm at work in my real job, and like I think about, wow, the things I'm learning on the field translate and vice versa. And so that's just it's a mindset that you can live through. But I just want to give a huge thank you to the whole entire Texas community. They have just embraced me with open arms. it's been so cool, like going to these different Bunker Fest events and like people come up to me asking for stickers or like giving me hugs, or like I think I even took a few selfies at Bunker Fest, which was like the weirdest thing. So there's nothing like Texas paintball, that's for sure.
Absolutely, and that's why Texas is the mecca right now, and it will continue to be the mecca for some time.
It's only going to get bigger.
Absolutely. All right, so that does it for our show. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Be sure to go follow Dan at Shellda Photos on Instagram, and then also go check out his upcoming children's book, A Dragon's Journey to Dynasty, on Amazon. So what other guests would y'all like to see on the show? Be sure to leave a comment down below. While you're at it, hit that subscribe button. The show goes live weekly here on youtube.com/@inthepitspaintballpodcast, and recordings are posted to YouTube, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify the next day. I want to give a shout out to my partner and sponsor tier subscribers on Patreon: FU Athletics, Get That Shot, Paintball Kumite, Compete, Bem Raps, Skull Monkeys Paintball, Hydra, XTPL Events, YI Paintball, Mariachi Águilas de Oro, and Pod Runners Union. We will see you guys next week for episode 72, where we are going to have none other than Justin Rabikoff. And everybody stay tuned for the November episode schedule. We're going to have 5 Wednesdays in November. So we'll see how I'm able to navigate Cup Week. But yeah, I'm going to get you 5 episodes in November somehow. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be great. Dan, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for booking me now and not after Justin Rabikoff. I couldn't fill those shoes.
All right. So everybody, we will see you next week.